So Opinator and I had an idea about trying to go through some items that are lesser used in the game. Things that need a little bit of love, maybe. Items that have fallen or had a place or never had a place, but probably need one now. And before we kind of go through our list here, we know what we're doing is essentially trying to say, where did the people who made this awesome game that we apologize, we're dev apologists, both of us, where did they go wrong? And that's a pretty tough topic for both of us. So if you guys have any suggestions for items or things that we may have messed up, just let us know down in the comments, and we'll go from there. So we're going to start this off actually with Wapinator at number 6 item that we think needs a little bit of love.
Next, I want to talk about Cranebeak. I know Cranebeak has the ultimate thing of you can just get a bunch to Raven, pair it with a Raven lore, and it means that I think Raven might be the skill that you can get highest in the game of any skill anywhere. I know you can break 60 just with 6 here and 7 from Raven lore, then plus to skills elsewhere and such. So it has that niche, but there's a lot of people that would rather not just go into purely Raven. So it's nice that it has that, but I'm not really sure what we should do with Cranebeak to make it more viable in a greater space. And I think it's probably fine that that continues to be its only niche. As it kind of said in the intro, I really don't know where to go with a few of these items that are left, and Senpai and team already did a great job at making a lot of them particularly viable.
All right, and I'm coming in here at number 5. This is sort of a dual set here, but the Viper Fork, to me, does not really have a great place in the game right now. It has some cool stuff on it. ED, IAS, attack rating, flat, poison skill damage, and 4 to 5 to poison skills. Here's the problem. There's no spear, all the spear skills, or the poison skills for Amazon are throwing. There is no power strike with poison on it. And honestly, with the Desecrate that comes from this, I mean, I tried running this as like a Necromancer who would drop Desecrates. It just never really worked. So there's 2 ways I think you could get this to work. One is with the Corpse Morn, and you would need some sort of poison skill with the Amazon that wasn't so overpowered that you could pair it with a Corpse Morn, and you'd have to have a bunch of FCR on this, but then you could essentially have a Corpse Explosion Amazon that would have some sort of skill that would obviously drop some poison on the ground too, and then you'd have the Desecrates. Considering the Desecrates do a bit of AoE, I'm not sure what it would be better to have a single target stabby skill with poison, or maybe one that's more of a Nova style. But the point is that you wouldn't want to overpower it too much, because I think the obvious answer is to pair it with the Corpse Morn and make it into some kind of poison summoner hybrid, right? It's something that you run with decoys and Valkyries, but at the same time you sort of do everything. So you'd have poison damage, fire damage, physical damage. It would be a little cheesy and weird, but the Viper Fork just doesn't have a place. And in the way it's built, it kind of looks like maybe they intended to add that skill and just never did.
Next, I want to talk about Blood Moon. Blood Moon is a cool weapon. The Blood Golem charges can obviously be useful for some things, but it just feels like it doesn't do anywhere near enough damage compared to a lot of the other options around it. You want a one-handed weapon that does, a bunch of damage. Blood Moon doesn't seem like the place. It's going to be, something, well, this guy, there aren't many swords that are actually doing that much, but I think I really like the whole lifesteal, bleed, life after kill kind of theming of this. And with Aldicians recently, it made me think that maybe there's a way to kind of make a lifesteal tribal type build out of it, where maybe a bonus to damage or something like that out of having a bunch of lifesteal, where you get a certain amount of extra damage per lifesteal that you have. Or maybe, I know it would be tough to build because it would be a kind of new mechanic, but something like an overheal mechanic, something like the ward that existed in last epoch. So some sort of option there. I know it also would be tough to balance that way, because you do have to balance it around the fact that barbarians could wear 2 of them. So it makes that kind of tough.
All right, and I'm coming in here at number 3 is Ethereal Edge. Again, this is an elite axe. It should be up here with the rest of them, right? Executioner's Justice has a purpose. Messerschmitt's is not that great, but still has a purpose with bleed builds. Hellslayer, again, kind of has a purpose. It's got at least that high max damage. These can all be sort of placeholder weapons, but Ethereal Edge isn't even a placeholder weapon. What they've got added on here with the extra IAS just isn't really enough. I mean, it sort of has a small place, I guess, as a starter weapon for maybe a Fury Druid because it has some built-in IAS. But really what this needs is more ED. It needs to have a place, and it just doesn't because it's not competitive with anything. On top of that, the life after Demon Kill is just sort of weird. It's sort of inconsistent. The Fire Absorb there, I mean, maybe this was meant to be a declone item for starter Fury Druids. That's the only thing I could think of. But really, when you have an item this sort of, I hate to say it, bland, you could add anything to it. Anything. Just something to make this worthwhile when you find it.
These two scepters seem to have relatively limited utility. I know scepters are kind of tough to balance around because, as Senpai talked about when adding Akarats, they usually don't have cast speed on them, and so they're not really that great for casters. But then if you're looking for damage, there's often better options for physical stuff. So this has a lot of cool secondary stats on it, minus defense, crushing blow, but life on Demon Kill is like kinda eh. The attack speed means it's like still pretty slow when it has a base of 0 with only plus 20. The plus skills isn't like the most useful for a lot of things, so it's weird to decide which paladin offensive skill would really find this viable. So I'm not really sure where to go with this. Same thing with the Redeemer in that it also has this minus defense. Oh, it has flat damage. Well, that would be nice if it weren't for the fact that Astrian's has more flat damage. So it's usually going to be better for Smite, especially because it also has this crushing blow on it. So kind of tough to really see where the pair of these fit. The only time I've really found myself using the Redeemers for the redemption on a swap, just so I can have it without any putting any points into it. So kind of tough there. As far as a few honorable mentions of things to look at, first of all, Razor's Edge and Deathcleaver have been very similar for a very long time. IAS, ED, minus defense, deadly strike. IAS, ED, minus defense, deadly strike. This one has a little min damage and a little life after each kill. This one has a little open wounds, and now it has a little more attack speed. It didn't used to. Both of the weapons have the same base damage, or base speed, and the same base average damage, with the Berserker Axe having a little more of a spread, and the Tomahawk being a bit more narrow in its band. But they were so similar for so long, I was always just like, well, I'd rather try to get more sockets out of the Deathcleaver. So I'm glad they've tried to differentiate it a little bit here, but it still does feel like they need a little more of a separate place. I know that the open wounds made them nerf this one a little bit compared to buffing Deathcleaver this season, but I still think they're a little too similar. Ariok's Needle. Ariok's Needle annoys me just because of this right here. Oh, not that, the other three. Max sockets of 3 on a Hyperion Spear. That means that, oh, I found a really good Hyperion Spear, let me slam it. Oh, it got 3 sockets. Well, that's kind of useless. And even if you get a good slam with attack speed and ED or, damage and ignore target defense or something, you can only puzzle box it for 3, and that just hurts so much. So I know that they've kind of overtuned the weapon in order to try to compensate for that, but I think mentally it makes people lose any respect they might have for the item when they know they can't get maximum sockets out of it. So that's just kind of an unfortunate part of it. Next I want to talk, even though we were mostly talking about elite items here, about Steel Skull. I love this item. It just feels like it's tough to find a good place for it. Someone that needs a little bit of defensive utility and the hit recovery and leech won't necessarily need the attack speed, and it kind of is a conflict with itself there. It hasn't gotten huge buffs since it was an LOD, but I almost wonder if it needs something like a bit of min damage or something to really just kind of push it over the edge. There's a lot of the rest of these that still have, this is great for early game walking and such, though yes, you'll normally just replace it with the Shaco, but the extra faster run walk means it's always nice for something. Rock Stopper has huge defense. This has Cannot Be Frozen early in the game, and Cloak of Shadows O skill. Great Lightning Absorb for Ubers. Obviously, Vamp Gaze is excellent, same with Valkwing. This is so much Leech that it's like great, but it feels like it's kind of sitting alone, that it doesn't quite get there. Well, not just Leech. The Crown of Thieves also is just Trav. Extraordinaire. Fire Res and Life Gold Find. And last, I kind of want to talk about Spike Thorn. It has so much cool stuff going on. I just never know what character I want to actually build with a Spike Thorn. I love this item. Faster recovery, damage, PDR. The Thorns is obviously necessary just as the fact of kind of thematically the Blade Barrier needs it. I think the answer might be right here. It used to have a socket, and maybe we just throw the auto mod 1 to 3 sockets on here. That makes it kind of more viable that way. Gloomstrap I was going to talk about, but I actually just thought it might be what I need for Odysseans with all this extra mana on it. But it kind of just feels like normally I'd rather have a caster belt that gets me some extra mana, gets me some cast rate. And so like even in the early mid game, it's kind of just not quite there, not quite good enough.
All right, honorable mentions, because Wapinator had so many ideas here. I actually have only one honorable mention that I thought needed some reworks, and, it is Rune Master, if I can actually get down to it. Again, this is an Etnax. It should be useful. Again, Berserkers has a place. Wapinator obviously went over Canebrake. Razor's Edge had a place. These two are incredibly similar, and wherever you are in the video, I think Wapinator is going to mention as an honorable mention how these are similar, but there's nothing here. Again, it's sort of just a damage stick. The Cannot Be Frozen is cool. They tried to get the curse resistance on there, but what does this do? It's 5 sockets and ED. Again, it sort of just reminds me of Ethereal Edge. Why does this not have something to make it maybe a go-to weapon for like a cold paladin? Why can't this item roll extra damage to a certain element, right? And then it would be, you could literally put it on whatever your native aura paladin is or something like that. I know this is nitpicking here, and that's exactly what I said at the start of the video. It's like, how do we figure out items that the devs have missed? And when we started going through this, we realized, holy lord, they have really put a place for almost every item in the game. It's just as things have evolved over time, like obviously this was meant to have something to do with their curse changes. But once they changed from, curse reduction to curse resistance, it's like this sort of doesn't really have a place anymore. All right, and the big daddy that kind of started this whole discussion between me and Wapinator is the Wizard Spike. So this is one of my favorite items in the game, at least in LOD, but what does it do here? It does absolutely nothing. And I know daggers are not specifically, big ticket items, but this is a cool item. The cast rate is through the roof. The increased mana helps out, and mana per character level helps out any sort of energy shield build with Sork. The regenerate mana, it has the massive resistances on it, and nothing else. And again, it has a place in LOD, but what sorceress is going to use this over a Fathom? What Fire Sork is going to use this over an Ashudas? What Lightning Sork is going to use this over an Ashudas or an Infinity themselves? And what Sork is going to use this over an Oculus as a starter weapon? This one truly doesn't have anything with it, and it's got all these juicy stats on here. So here's how I would change this one, and let me know if you think I'm a little crazy here. I would dump the resistances down a little bit, make it roll between, say, 50 to 60 resistances, and then similar to the unique rings that everyone forgot, the Kadala's heirlooms, people always forget to search for those, it can roll +2 poison skills or +2 lightning skills, and it has, when it rolls that, it also gets, say, a negative 5 to 10% roll to the resistance of that skill. And that might make it an attractive option over something like a Fathom, because for a Cold Sork, it has more resistances, it's going to have more built-in cast rate, it'll help out your energy shield, though as a Cold Sork you're probably not dumping into energy shield, but it would also maybe compete, you have to make that choice. Do I want the 30% extra cold damage, or if I roll 2 sockets on this, and I can get to negative 20 resistance, is that better than maybe having the Fathom, or at least a cheaper option, right? I know you can get the negative 15 on the Fathom if you use 355 facets and 3 sockets, but hey, a 3-socket Fathom would cost you an arm and a leg. Maybe a 2-socket Whiz Spike wouldn't be so much. I also think it would open up a lot more options for the 200 FCR builds. 50 faster cast rate on any weapon is a lot. I mean, generally you're looking at 40 with a cast rate corruption on any of your standard weapons. I mean, what, a Death Fathom starts out with 40, I believe, so it might get to 50 if you roll that, but I don't know. If you could even roll 60% if you got a faster cast rate on this. It would open up the shield options to break you off, at least on a Cold Sork, from maybe Tybex and Medusa's Gaze. I don't know. Something needs to be done with Wizard Spike, just because it is such a cool item. And that's the only thing I can think of. Get some elemental skills and reductions on it, and it might be something worthwhile again. Again, if you disagree with anything that we've said, perfectly fine. Generally, Wappin' and I are, semi-elitist about these things and tell you guys to F off. But this is one I'd legitimately like to hear some feedback on, as long as your feedback isn't, you guys play softcore and don't know what you're talking about. Always love the hardcore players. I love you guys, but you are idiots. No, you're not idiots. You're incredibly smart. You're just assholes. You kiss your dads. Anyway, let us know in the comments if you want to pick up some items that we can go over next time, or if you got one that you think should be changed and ripped up a bit. See you guys later.